Meet Dennis Rader, the serial killer who evaded capture for over 30 years, terrorizing Wichita, Kansas, with his brutal crimes. Dennis Rader, known as the BTK Killer, lived a double life, a life of horror and deception. He was a husband, a father, and a church leader, but also a serial killer. His crimes would go unsolved for decades, leaving a community in fear. The BTK Killer's name stands for bind, torture, kill, a name that would become synonymous with terror in Wichita, Kansas. Rader was born in 1945, in Pittsburgh, Kansas. He grew up in a seemingly normal family, but his childhood was marked by a dark fascination with violence and death. He was a loner, with few friends, and found solace in his own twisted fantasies. As he grew older, his fantasies became more sinister, and he began to act on them. Rader's motivations were rooted in a desire for control and power, and he would stop at nothing to satisfy his twisted cravings. The first BTK murders took place in 1974. When Rader killed 4 members of the Otero family. The crime scene was gruesome, with signs of torture and brutality. The police were baffled, with no leads or suspects. The investigation was launched, but Rader had already begun to taunt the police, sending cryptic letters and messages. The police were in a cat-and-mouse game with the killer, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. The community was on edge, with fear and panic spreading like wildfire. Rader continued to kill, and the police continued to investigate. But Rader was always one step ahead, leaving behind a trail of clues and misdirection. He sent letters to the police and media, signing them as the BTK Killer. The letters were eerie and disturbing, with Rader detailing his crimes and motivations. The police were frustrated, with no leads or suspects. The community was terrified, with the BTK Killer still on the loose. Rader's game of cat and mouse with the police would go on for decades, with no end in sight. In 2005, the police finally got a break in the case. A floppy disk was sent to the police, with metadata that led them to Rader. The police were shocked, as Rader was a respected member of the community. He was arrested and confessed to the crimes, revealing a twisted and sinister mind. The community was stunned, with many wondering how they had missed the signs. Rader's confession was a shocking revelation, with details of his crimes and motivations. The police were relieved, with the BTK Killer finally behind bars. The aftermath of Rader's confession was devastating. The community was left to pick up the pieces, with many struggling to come to terms with the fact that a serial killer had lived among them. The police were hailed as heroes, with their tireless efforts finally paying off. Rader was sentenced to life in prison, with no possibility of parole. The case of the BTK Killer would go down in history, as one of the most shocking and disturbing serial killer cases of all time. The community would never forget the terror they experienced, and the police would never forget the cat-and-mouse game they played with the killer. The most shocking aspect of the case was Rader's double life. He was a husband, a father, and a church leader, but also a serial killer. His family and friends were stunned, with many wondering how they had missed the signs. Rader's double life was a masterful deception, with him leading 2 separate lives. The revelation of his double life would haunt the community, with many left to wonder how they had been so blind. The case of the BTK Killer would serve as a reminder, that even the most seemingly normal person can lead a life of horror and deception. The final confrontation between Rader and the police was a tense and dramatic moment. Rader was arrested and confessed to the crimes, revealing a twisted and sinister mind. The police were relieved, with the BTK Killer finally behind bars. The community was stunned, with many wondering how they had missed the signs. Rader's confession was a shocking revelation, with details of his crimes and motivations. The case of the BTK Killer would go down in history, as one of the most shocking and disturbing serial killer cases of all time. The police would never forget the cat-and-mouse game they played with the killer, and the community would never forget the terror they experienced. The case of the BTK Killer is a chilling reminder of the horror and deception that can lurk in the darkest corners of the human mind. Join us next time, as we explore more true crime stories and delve into the darker side of human nature.